Recently, Mongolian netizens have been obsessed with the Netflix's new show, Physical Asia, because 6 of our elite athletes have made it to the international entertainment stage. Those people are Orkhonbayar, Mongolian wrestler and also a team captain, Dulgong Inchbat, basketball player, Лавгачар Эрдэнэчэр, Cirque du Soleil performer, Инх Оргил Батэрхүү MMA fighter, Хан Цүрэн Ган Тогтох volleyball player, Адья Сүрэн Амар Сайхан, a judoka. As a person who has a very mid physique, the closest I can relate to any of their discipline is MMA. And I'm stretching it for like hundreds of kilometers when I say this. I mean, if there were a bodybuilder, that would have been the closest discipline that I can relate to, but let me tell you, I did practice Muay Thai for a few months, so don't try me. I'ma just say that. So they are among the best of each of their disciplines, and I can't be happier with the roster. Whatever happens, they will be considered the winner in the hearts of Mongolians. With that aside, the most attention-grabbing contestant locally and internationally out of the 6 is undeniably Orkhonbayar, the Mongolian wrestler. He became a superstar in 2022 when he won the first place in Mongolian wrestling during our independence holiday. With that, he brought new age to Mongolian wrestling as well as many girls on board to the sport, one of which is yours truly. Proudly, because look at him. He's handsome, he's big, he's strong. Give me a big boy. Cringe. Anyways, his somewhat stoically and low-key personality just draws people in, and he's a pretty private person. But seeing him proudly sporting the traditional attire of Mongolian wrestler and showcasing one of the oldest tradition of ours was an exciting and a proud moment to me as a Mongolian. So to capture the moment of this niche virality, I decided to talk about the exact movie that Orkhonbayar might have watched about 1,000 times, Garid Magnai, a film depicting a journey of a humble Mongolian wrestler. In the last decade of Mongolia under monarchy, where social elite class included the royals, the prince and princesses, high-ranking Buddhist authorities, leaders of army, and successful businessmen, being a normal person meant that you were a property of a elite class. You're not even a working class, you just were a property. You had to answer to them and revere them with great respect. You work for them and give your labor in turn to exist in their land. And if you did not have anyone that you can attach yourself to, you were destined to a life of lonely journey of finding a next physical labor where you can be paid with shelter and food. And that is the faith of Dalaitseren, a man orphaned at a young age, a man who's made a living exactly like that. He traverses the mountains to get to the Hure, which is the largest settlement or largest town of Mongolia of the early 1900s, which is also a town that turned into the capital city. He's going there to search for a better job and better living, just to see the fun and development of the big town. But he doesn't have a lot in his possession except his bowl and utensil. Hopefully it will be useful soon, and a heart on his sleeve. Whilst passing over a hill, Dalaitseren comes across another man who's been carrying this big 2 chests all on his own. His horse is all worn out and can't inch forward without coming too close to faint. Those who were passing by him did not offer to help out, so Dalaitseren offers to lend a hand as a gesture of sympathy. They are both alone men, and it's always good to have a partner. But instead of appreciating his good faith help, the man tauntingly laughs at his confidence and dares him to bring the chest to the top of the hill and says if he could do it, he would give his horse to Dalaitseren. What kind of twisted answer is that? Just say thank you and accept his help, or simply say no? What a twisted reply to an offer which you clearly need. I don't like this man at all. So Dalaitseren feels the same as I do and decides to continue his own way. Then the other man taunts him even more, calling him names and says that he will add his fancy pipe on top of his horse. So Dalaitseren accepts this and folds his del, which is a traditional gown, to use it as a padding on his neck, and lifts the chests up. But just as he does so, the other man says if he couldn't carry them to the top of the hill, Dalaitseren would have to work for him for 3 years. What? Sneaky piece of shit. Because, he just made someone's desire to help into a trap. Such a nasty man, and Dalaitseren fell right into it. By continuing to help, he's signing the TNC of this sneaky garbage just to prove he's strong. Such pride, huh? Then the other man even adds if he pauses, he'd disqualify him. Just adding different rules as Dalatseren's mind is just busy. Not hearing what he blabbers, Dalaitseren powers through to the top of the hill and even performs a custom circling around the pile of rock, fully completing the dare. The other man, whose name is Rafsal, who is also a successful businessman, surprisingly keeps his promise and gives his horse. Although Dalaitseren did this to prove his strength and was not planning on taking anything, as a payment for trying to talk down on him, he accepts the horse. Man, pride is a nasty thing. Just take the freaking pipe. You could at least sell it and have a bit of a buffer money, which you clearly need. Like, he's so, I don't know how to say, prideful and naive. Such a bad combination. But at least he took the horse. Imagine a Mongolian without a horse. It's like a Spanish without a boat and a French without a baguette or something like that. So our Dalaitseren doesn't have to walk on his feet for miles and kilometers on end. Just as he's thinking so, another man catches up to him. Let me tell you. That fuck-ass businessman has sent a big burly man to topple him over and bring his horse back. They both pull over and, understandably, proceeds to wrestle. And although Dalaitseren can easily lift him up and throw him around like a rag doll, he stands no chance against the man's swift moves. And it seems like he's gonna have to lose his horse. But after throwing down Dalaitseren to the ground, the other man drops his act. It turns out the man who chased him is a professional wrestler and wants to challenge Dalatseren's strength after hearing about him from Russell. So my mind is still stuck on Russell, that sneaky man. In a fashion of successful businessmen, he's always on the go, like to get supply from there and sell it over there. So the two chests that Dalaitseren carried for him were on the road when they were going up a hill with his goods. And after sending the other two forward, he came back and checked the contents of the chest, which turned out to be a fine silk. So at that time, finding a fine silk was like finding a pure gold or something like that. And was he going to just leave the free silk on the road? No, but instead of having to carry the load with Dalaitseren, he challenged him into doing it alone with a dare. Because one thing about Rafsal is that he can read people like book and speak like a poet. He knew that Dalaitseren would try to prove himself, so he basically turned the situation around and he just wins either way. Either by getting the goods on top of the mountain or recruiting a fresh new muscle for 3 years. Ocher is a saint compared to Rafsal. He's also a wrestler with the height of an elephant. So that means he's quite a big dog in the wrestling world. So Mongolian wrestling ranking is as follows. So the lowest ranking title you can get is Nacheng, or a kestrel, a bird of genus falcon. You need to win 5 consecutive rounds in a competition to get that. 6 wins will get you a title of hartzak, which is another type of falcon. So guess our favorite bird now. 7 is elephant. 8 wins, you will be Garid, which is a mythical mix of bird and human. 9 wins, you will be lion, and 10, or finishing a wrestling competition with a victory, will get you a title of champion. And if you repeatedly become champion, you will be the champion of all, and then champion of the sea, and then the eternal champion, which is the peak of Mongolian wrestling ranking, which is pretty hard to achieve because nowadays you have to win 10 rounds during a Mongolian independence festival 3 times. But we do have several eternal champions like Batmanyam Bungin Batirtin and Agwan Samding Sukhbat and all of. So those people are respected throughout the whole country. Especially the Batirtin, he actually represented and carried our flag in Korean Olympic Festival. So according to this ranking system, Ocher has won at least 7 rounds and has some tricks up his sleeve. In fact, in the movie, he's known as Ocher the Trickster because he's got good technique and tricks and he can really infuse those into the wrestling, and he understands that wrestling is not just about physical strength but also a technique. And he also deeply reveres the art of wrestling, and he supports up-and-coming trainees. And when hearing about this incredible strength, he couldn't help but bother. So their path crosses at the right time, and Dalaitseren starts going under Otcher's wings. Otcher also works for Rafsel, who has two permanent helpers, Yatam, the wise old man, and his daughter Otwal. Otwal usually cares for the house chores and cooking and cleaning and milking the horses and animals, and when trying to fetch water from a spring, Otwal gets harassed by a random man, and that man has no regards for courtesy or dignity or consent. He just heckles her. To think that I used to see this kind of behavior from men normal and would even want it, thank God I was so chopped. Luckily, Dalaitseren comes to her rescue, and girl, I wish you could get a Glock. Or, I don't know, bow and arrow, whatever was around at that time. By virtue of following Otcher, Dalaitseren starts working for Rafsal, and a mini festival happens to be taking place soon where they were stationed at, as it could be a nice opportunity for him to get a taste of a real deal with less at stake. Dalaitseren wants to compete, but he hasn't had any formal training at all. And Otcher knows that he shouldn't start off strong, especially on this one, because one of the wrestlers competing is known to literally just finish the opponent so much that some young wrestlers end up crippled due to his cruise show. So Otcher talks to his acquaintance and talks him into claiming Dalaitseren in the next round. Although Dalaitseren is strong, that is all he has, which is enough when he's competing against those who are also new. He can just throw them around with brute strength, but ending up with a trickster like Otcher, especially those without moral, could cut his career short. So at certain stage of the competition, those high-ranking wrestlers claim their next opponent, which I don't know who thought this was a fair way to give everyone a chance, but that is how it is. And this move from Otcher proves to be right, as Jigmit, who is known to be very cruel to his opponent, does exactly what he was fearing to one of the new wrestlers. Poor guy needs to be carried away from the field, and I don't like this Jigmit guy. Neither does Otcher. It is clear that they have some bad blood between them. Good thing Otcher has managed to arrange the claim, and I wonder what Rafsal is arranging with his fellow businessmen. Dalaitseren spends more time working for Rafsal, tending to the daily physical work and using it as a training and as a chance to spend time with Otwal. But he better start putting his mind to his training, because another bigger wrestling competition is drawing near. Although he doesn't have much time to prepare, he challenges himself again. But this time he learns that wrestling is not just about physical power, as he hears someone mentioning his name. He keeps listening, and it's another wrestler talking to his friends about claiming him in the next round, as he looks easy and untrained. Otcher tells him to tune out the noise and play defense, but he does the exact opposite and loses, hereby finishing his first big competition earlier than he'd like. But it's a good lesson to learn that wrestling requires not only a physical strength but a mental fortitude as well. Time goes on, and Dalaitseren, Otcher, and Yato go on another supply trip from afar. They share booze and interesting stories, and they talk not only about strong men, but about strong women too. Yatom talks about how the wrestlers' attire needed to be changed to discourage women from the sport, because they would compete and win. So the movie depicts this scene as a digital tipping of the head towards a woman, but to me it's just showing the length at which men want to bar women from enjoying whatever they are enjoying.
Bitch, we don't want the recipe to your mom peach cobbler, bitch.
So speaking of women, it seems like Otwal is developing feelings for Dalaitseren, as the house chores that she does with Dalaitseren, like fetching ice, would turn into this fun little date where they enjoy each other's company. It's clearly shown in the movie that Dalaitseren has feeling for her, but he refrains from expressing it, thinking it would put pressure on her. Alright, enjoy some fantastic summer scenes. I'm gonna scroll on TikTok for a while. So Dalaitseren decides to take this summer's competition more seriously and joins a wrestling training camp. Here he learns more techniques and tricks as well as performance of entry in the field with great aura. At one point of their training, they even wrestled on a freshly collected stinging nettle to really just squeeze out their last ounce of strength and knowledge to not fall. They really infused the nature and surrounding environment into their training a lot. Like, for example, they wrestle during the rain on a wet soil to learn balancing, they carry a big log up a stream and things like that. And all this effort starts to pay off as Dalaitseren starts his competition successfully. Whilst he and Otter are resting between rounds, Russell pulls up on them. Another nice thing about horses is that you can drink and ride. There's no such thing as RUI yet. It's almost like riding a Tesla. It's pretty self-driving. And he comes to them tipsy, but in good faith, wishing the best to Dalaitseren and encouraging him to win. Everyone's counting on him. Dalaitseren asks if Yetim came here with him. Unfortunately, no. But Otwald has come, and that is all he needed to hear. So the competition continues, and Dalaitseren just takes them down one after another. Otwald watches him like a geezer watching a football, almost pushing her friend over. Girl, take it easy. Wag in training much? This competition he's attending is not a simple regional one. It's a special kind called Danshik Festival, where the king and queen themselves attend. So performing your best on this one can capture their attention. Therefore, you may have a rich patron and be set for life. And now Dalaitseren is just 2 rounds away from winning, and everyone is excited by this sudden turn of events. A young, unknown novice wrestler out of nowhere has managed to make this far into the competition, and his opponents are both experienced champions. But this does not discourage Dalaitseren. He has his physical strength and his mental strength. He will give his all. But should he? Because his opponents are both royals wrestlers, and the one he just toppled is the king's wrestler, and in the final round he will face his previous opponent's brother, who's the queen's wrestler. Should he ruffle the feather and risk upsetting the royals? He has already shown a great performance and showed everyone his prowess and potential. I mean, if it was available, he would have won the People's Choice Award. He's proven himself. Otter pleads with him to let this one slide, but with the brash naivety of youth and a strong sense of honesty, Dalaitseren steps into the field. This fall results in people screaming Dalatseren's victory and the socialite standing with his opponent, which eventually calls for a rematch. So it's his unanimous victory. Everyone saw that he won. But this truly upsets the queen, who storms out of her tent. And instead of celebrating his victory, Otter says that he should have wrestled smartly. Smartly? I mean, he says that he should have been a bit more smarter. What? Okay, so he's saying like he should have been smart. Otter, being a several years his senior and knowing the industry well, laments at him for not using timing and missing a chance to please the royals, which could have put him in their favor. I mean, like, you should have said that earlier. Well, after winning a competition for the first time, he's riddled with conflicted emotions due to the bureaucracy and unwritten rules of playing politics. He's alone in his tent when the champion walks in. They talk briefly about Dalatseren's hometown. The champion knows his hometown and he really loves the beauty of it. Dalaitseren then asks if he has made a mistake by winning them both, and he is bracing himself for some scolding. But whoever powerful wins, and Dalaitseren was powerful, the champion understands that it's a time for some new blood. And after that, he calls him to come outside to show the people walking about. They are all here to enjoy the show. They want to see some exciting performances. Saying this, the champion gives his wrestling attire to Dalaitseren and blends into the crowd. So the champion fully accepts his defeat and is happy to pass the baton of honor to the new generation, but not the social elites. Dalaitseren, a young man from a simple background, just winning and soaring without licking the buttocks of the elite circle's wrestler, is equivalent to him disrespecting them. The royals leave the festival after both of their athletes lose, so the festival comes to a halt, which is crazy because this festival was a chance for normal people to enjoy and forget their daily life and just entertain. But still, the whole thing has to suit the royals' desire. And those who follow and lick the royals' boot act upon the authority by proximity. Whilst Rafsal sits in his tent comfortably, a few monks come in and start taunting him as his worker was upsetting the king. After some fierce back and forth, his sharp tongue gets him in trouble and the monks dip his head in Eric. And looking at Dalaitseren, he enrages at him for not losing, which is crazy because just a few minutes ago he was cheering him on and saying that he should win for the people. Now he's done a full 180, and Dalaitseren feels like he's truly stuck in between. I think it's a rude awakening to anyone when you realize the world works differently to what you've been told. Everything in life, to a degree, requires you to play this unknown game, and the rules and the regulations and procedures are like guidelines that can be changed and adjusted, and you don't know when and how it should be done. You realize life has way more to do with how you manage people rather than a simple linear progression of next steps, and that's what Dalaitseren is facing alone. So the festival ends with Dalaitseren revoking his victory, but Otvotl and Dalaitseren finally talk about their feelings towards each other, and it's clear that they are both in love. Maybe wrestling is not the end-all be-all, and there are far more important things in life like companionship, love, and family, and horse, and people. Normal people love him as he's the symbol of power of true effort. And he's one of them, but with great love from people comes hatred from some. Whilst walking down to go home, Dalaitseren and Otvotl get attacked by young monks, and they throw rocks at him. Oh, poor him. That is so mean. Luckily, some people end up riding into the street, which ends up saving them. So it turns out Rafsal has arranged a marriage between Otvotl and the rando from a spring. Do you remember the guy? He turns out he was the son of another rich businessman. Although Rafsal is not the father of Otvotl, he arranged this marriage to have a tie with another businessman. See, he's like so nasty, cunningly smart, but lacks morality and sympathy, and does whatever he deems beneficial to him. And that was the reason he went back to check out what was inside the chest. That was the reason he supported Dalaitseren so that he could work for him. That was the reason he talked to the man in the tent in an earlier competition. And now he tells Yetam, his faithful helper who's worked for him for decades, that his daughter will be sent off to marry a rich man tomorrow. When the groom's side comes to Rafsal's home, Dalaitseren et al. Have already left, blocking Rafsal's door with a big boulder. They release him and sends people to capture Oddvall and Dalaitseren. Oddvall gets abducted by the groom's side, whilst Dalaitseren is tied down to a wooden carrier to be admitted to the police and probably be persecuted for a made-up crime. But at the right time, Ocher ends up coming to his rescue.
어찌르면 бурхны засныг хэн зөрчиж байлаа да. Чи ч хөр ийм дээрээ тулсан би. Очроо! Бараа. Жигмэтийг дуутаага өчөө. Харж байгаа үстэй. Таны хэлдгээр аяноч болдгоо хороо байж.
Whilst they are struggling to release his cuffs, Ocher's mortal enemy, Jigmet, who ended up becoming a police, strikes a fatal blow on Ocher. Before Jigmet could attack him, Dalaitseren breaks away from his chains and basically just kills him. A few moments away from death, Ocher says that Dalaitseren was right. He tells him to go get Oddvall. And after living his life with dignity and wisdom and truly loving the art of Mongolian wrestling, he takes his last breath in the arms of his last student. Without Ocher's guidance, support, and dare I say, a fatherly love, Dalaitseren's potential would have suffered without direction. But the very bureaucracy that Ocher learned to live and thought he could manage ends up becoming his death. After promising to see Refsel again, Dalaitseren rides after Oddvall, and the rando and his henchmen see bloody-faced Dalaitseren and all run away to different directions. Thank you, plot armor, because there were 4 of them, and the rando had a bow and arrow. I think they had a chance to take him down, but luckily they're all too chicken to do anything. Oddvall gets left behind in the chariot and cries into Dalaitseren's hug when he frees her, and they free the chariot horse and they both ride into whatever direction that seemed to be free of people. So there you have it. This is a staple movie in Mongolian film history. Back when I used to watch cable TV, this movie was so unavoidable during any traditional holidays. And at that time, I was not really in the mood to appreciate slow-paced movies. I needed that rush, that dopamine, that Marvels, that DC, that Harry Potter, or whatever else I was into back then. So that means I actually never really sat down through this movie in one go. And watching it again this time with more appreciation, this movie feels as fresh as new, and I hope I was able to deliver at least a fraction of the beauty of this film, but nothing is compared to watching the original, so feel free to do so as I have linked to the movie. And at the time of the script, Mongolian team still hasn't shown their second competition yet, and I'm just as excited as I'm nervous to see how it goes. And just thank you so much for watching my video. I wonder if anyone really reached this point, but if you did, just thank you so much. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel. And if you like watching vintage movies, hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye!